Hello and welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute-a-day podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse, recorded here in the dining room of the Bible Bistro, located in Sharonville, Ohio. Hey there friends, welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. And today in the Bible Bistro, I think I got my mic turned on. Yesterday, it appears that I had turned on the default mic on my equipment, and instead of the default mic, I usually use my Blue Yeti USB mic. I love this mic. So to hope today it sounds a little bit better than it did yesterday. Today we're looking at verses 13 and 14. So if you have your Bible, why don't you turn there with me? And if you don't, I'll be glad to read these for you. This is verses 13 and 14 in Psalm 22. Now, just as by way of review, we've been looking at Psalm 22 last week. We're looking at it this week, and we'll look at it again next week. Psalm 22 contains probably the most prophecy in the Old Testament about the cross, and it's almost like David is standing there watching all of this as he writes this. He's writing this, and we're reading it as if Christ himself were saying these words, because he probably did say these words while he was on the cross. We know he said the very first verse on the cross. He kisses this psalm while he's on the cross, and so it becomes his very own. And as we read this, the first person in here, we're reading it as if Christ is saying it. The many bulls have surrounded me. Who's the me? Well, the me there is Christ. We have to assume that this is Christ because this is such a vivid picture of what happened on the cross. So Jesus is telling us all that's going on here. David writing, but he's writing in the first person voice of the one who's going to experience these things. Today, verses 13 and 14, they open their mouths against me. The lions tear and roar. I am poured out like water, and they have separated all my bones. My heart is like wax. It is melted in the midst of my bowels. So we come now to 13 and 14, and we see here in 13, they open their mouths. Who's the they? Well, we're talking about those strong bulls, those ones that surround him. And so we can think of, we're going to see it tomorrow, yes, in verse 16, the counsel of the wicked. So we'll talk about the counsel and what they did to send Christ to the cross. But those same people are here. They're opening their mouths against me. Now you can remember when Jesus was in the chamber there with the council, he's being insulted. You remember? They insulted him and they slapped him and so forth. And then it says here in 13, the lions tear and roar. They plowed those deep furrows on his back with the scourge. The Romans took him to crucify him, and in doing so, they scourged him beforehand. And the scourging was just an effort to hasten death. They didn't want the person to hang on the cross for days and weeks at a time. They wanted him to die quickly. And so the scourging was meant to do this. It's meant as punishment as well. I mean, the whole thing is horrific. From the scourging you receive, which tears the back apart, to the nailing on the cross, to the hanging on the cross, it's just all so very horrible. And of course, Christ received even worse than that because he's punched in the face. He's given the crown of thorns, which they bang down on his head. So he's bleeding from his scalp. He's probably bleeding from his face, his mouth. They pull out his beard. He's bleeding from his face. He's marred and scarred. As Isaiah said, he doesn't even resemble a human any longer. He's so disfigured. They scourge him, they send him to the cross. So the idea of him being torn is very vivid here in this picture. He says, I am poured out like water. They have separated all my bones. Of course, that's a vivid picture of the crucifixion. When they stretch him out on that cross and nail him, and then gravity takes over and begins to pull apart all the joints. So the entire body becomes disjointed while hanging there on that cross. And the heart melted like wax in the midst of the bowels. I have written here in my notes, John 19:34, where the soldier pierces his side and outflows water and blood. So that melting effect had happened, and he is reduced to the liquid. and it flows out. And what a beautiful stream that is for the church. This is one of those streams that flows down like the streams that flowed into the Garden of Eden that watered it. You know, this stream waters the church continually. From this time forth, it's there. It's always watering the church, the stream of water and blood. My heart, like wax, is melted in the midst of my bowels. All right, well, tomorrow we're going to look some more at this psalm and look at verses 15 and 16. I hope you'll join me then here on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. For more fresh and delicious Bible studies, podcasts, books, and more, check out the Bible Bistro online and on YouTube. Join me again next time for Daily Dose Radio.